Hi everyone, we're doing another oil pastels today. So for the rest of May, I think we'll be doing a little bit of pastels and sketching. So for today, we are doing this still life study. And today what I really want to do is to do a little bit of experimenting with color value. So I'm going to put this aside. You can still take pictures. I'll keep it right here. Get your 12 colors. If you have the Crayolas, there will be black, white, peach, pink, red, etc. There should be 12 colors. If you have more, that is fine. And you need paper. We're doing portrait today, so tall sheet as usual. So as you guys get your supplies, I'll just explain what we'll do. We're not going to use pencil today. We're just going to sketch with the pastel. So it's a little bit different. Usually we sketch with a pencil, right? But this time we're just going to use one of these colors. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the peach color and we're going to sketch out this orange first because it is in front. So you need peach. And why peach? Because we always work from the lightest here to the darkest. And I think this highlight is a little kind of pink rather than yellow. And yeah, so with the peach color, I'm just going to really roughly sketch it. It does not have to be perfect. We just want the color. So right here, make it a little bit darker. Can you see that? Hopefully that shows up okay. Just sketch a little circle with the pastel. And after you sketch it in, you can just fill in all of this with the peach color. So I'm doing that right now. Just filling in this orange with the highlight color. If you are out of peach, you can use yellow or a blend of yellow and white and pink. Just fill it in all the way. And so that is the first step. We're going to put the color to the side. The next color we'll be using is orange. So as the orange is orange, we'll be using orange. We're gonna go around this little highlight area. If you look at the picture, the highlight is centered around this little dot. And you can kind of, like we've always done, just kind of show yourself where that is. So I like to just draw a circle around it and then to tell myself not to go in the middle. But with this orange, I'm going to fill out the rest of the fruit. So I'm just going around the space that I've marked out for myself, which is going to be the highlight. Just going around it. Doesn't really matter what direction your strokes are going as long as you fill out the color. Okay, and we don't want this highlight to look too little like a bald spot, so we just want to blend it in, kind of make it feel more natural by adding some sketchy marks here and there. And before we move on, I actually think that we should bring back some of this highlight on the outside, because if you squint, or if you do an okay sign and just like pick out the color, this part is actually really light. So in here, I would use some of this peach color and just lighten up this half of the sphere. So we can go in with the peach or white or yellow, whatever you use, and just lighten the edge. Not all the way, but kind of to the center. So far we've only used peach and orange. The next color we'll be using is for the shadow over here. So there's a really strong dark shadow on the far left. We're going to use brown for this, and also some red. I'll explain what the red is for later. So with the brown, we're just going to look at this image and kind of tell ourselves, what shape is this? It's kind of like a triangle almost. So I'm going to sketch in some brown, just lightly. I'm just following the curve of this shadow right here. And you can start filling it in. Once again, it does not have to be exact. As long as the shade, the value is there, then that is good. You can press a little bit harder if you want. This is a really dark shadow. And there's a little bit of, it curves up. So I'm just using the brown, kind of fading out the edge, blending it a little bit, not too much, because we will be using red in just a second. And honestly, with the orange, because there's so many holes and pores on the skin, it is good to have a little bit of texture, so you don't have to blend everything out so smoothly this time. Okay, after the brown, we're going to use some red. And the red is going to go, if you see here on this orange right on the rim between the shadow and the midtones. Right here, there's a strip of this bright, vibrant orange. And because our orange is kind of, we already used it here, we're going to use red as a substitute. And to our eye, it will look a little bit red anyways. So just along the edge where the brown meets the orange, you can add a little bit of this red. This way we add a little bit of depth to the shape. If you think the edges are a little too rough, you can blend it with some orange. And I'll show you what that looks like. Doesn't make too much of a difference. But I like to go along, especially the bottom, and just blend it out so it's not too harsh of an edge. Okay, and the last step for this orange is, of course, the little dollop here, where I'm just gonna add that little dot. I'm using brown. Any dark color would work. And that should be it for the orange. The next fruit we'll be doing will be the pear. For those, the colors we need for that are peach and the greens. So you need the lime green as well as the dark green. So as we slowly move on to the next step, we're going to sketch again with the peach color and just kind of sketch out this pear. It's got a round bottom and a little bit of a extended part on top of it. So imagine you're just holding a pencil, but it's pastel. and it's scar color. And it's about the same size as the orange, so I would make this one a little bit bigger. And once again, you can fill it in. If you want, for this one, you can leave this very bright highlight right at this center. You can draw a circle around it and shade the rest, or color the rest in with the peach color. So just to explain a little bit why we sketch with peach is because for both of these fruits, you can kind of see the highlight. They're similar colors almost. The only thing that is the same between them is this peachy warm color because maybe the light was warm. And so we always start out with the lightest color when we're sketching. And then we can build the darker colors on top of that. Because if we started with the darker colors, you can still do that, but it is harder to bring back the light. So this is kind of just setting the foundation. Okay, after we use the peach, we're going to start using the lime green. So take your lighter green, and for this one we can go a little bit slower. So we just look at the image and kind of follow this trail of green here. So if we just start here, kind of goes towards the middle and then recedes when it reaches this almost pink part, like a blush. So we're going to do the same with our green. Go around the edges right on top of the peach color that we just put down. And then what I do here is I start from the edge and work my way in. Starting from the edge, add a little bit of color, pressing hard, and then slowly fading off. And really only this top part is pink. So for the bottom here, most of this will be a mixture of light green and peach. Yes, continue this color on the left side as well, even though there is a shadow there. So I'm just filling the rest of this in. Okay, so after you have added the lime green, we're actually going to go back and add some yellow, especially in this area, just to add a little bit more dimension. So with oil pastels, can the best thing you can do is just experiment with a lot of colors. So we're going to use some yellow, and if you want, you can clean it off on a paper towel, but you don't have to. So with the yellow stick, just going to blend it out, blend, the areas between the peach and the green. Just add some warmth back into the fruit. You could call this yellow a transition color because it every time you add a new color, it's usually to help two colors blend into each other a little bit better. So the yellow is for blending the green and the peachy color. And that's how we create depth. And just a little bit, not everywhere, just mostly in between the highlights and the midtones. before we move on to dark green, there's actually an interesting color combination that we will use, and that is purple on this pear right here. And the purple is for the shadows. So we're not using dark green for the shadows because usually when we use the same color, it looks kind of flat. But when we use what we call the complementary color, or anything that's kind of on the opposite side of the color wheel, it increases the depth of the object, just like how we did. We add a little bit of red here, or, you know, if we add purple to this pear, it will just bring the colors together. So with the purple, we're going to start shading in these shadows. So these darker tones right up top. It's kind of like a triangle over here, and then it continues along the edge. Not completely along the edge. Leave a little bit of this light green for the refracted light. So just this strip of shadow right here. I'm going left and right, left and right. And then there's also the shadow projected by the orange. So this. In most cases, when you want to shade an object, it is often better to use a complementary color as opposed to black. Because black can make things appear very flat, or it's just too permanent of a color. It's not even a color, it's just a shade. So with purple, continue shading the pear. Wherever you see, if you squint, if you just close your eyes a little bit, you can see that the rough shape of this shadow here. It goes in and then goes back out. And it goes back in again. And for future reference, a lot of things will be, well, in this class, we've been shading with purple because purple is one of the cooler colors compared to, red. So when we think cool, we think shade. So it kind of makes sense that we use purple so much. Oops. I am going to take the light green and just blend some of this purple into the brighter areas. So I'm going from the darks, kind of pushing the shadows in, just like that. Just a little thing over here, I'm going to bring back in this little highlight in this area, if you can see it. Just right here, there's a little bit of the lighter color. So on this drawing, it would be right about here. I'm using my lime green. This is because there's like bumps on the pear, and it just happens to reflect some light. And if this edge you think is a little too dark, you can always go back with some peach color and just bring back some of this refracted light on the edge. And refracted light is basically, because this pear is kind of shiny, it's picking up the light coming from the blanket, which is white. So the next step is optional. We were going to use the dark green, and just like we did with the red, add a little bit of that between the green and the purple. But this part is optional because we've already established the colors, or the transition colors. I'm still going to show you how that will look. So with the dark green, mostly in the places where I see some of this green turning into the shadow. So right here, I would add a little bit of dark green. Just a little bit, because this green is actually really saturated. Just to add a little bit more depth. And now I'm just taking this peach and adding back some of this refracted light on the edge. And refracted light, which is the light that goes beyond the shadow, is super important, very important, because it tells us where the object is. So if it's sitting on a red cloth, the refracted light will probably be a little bit pink. Or if it's on water, it might be blue, etc. So refracted light is very important. And just for fun, I'll just write down these words. That's not the right color. Okay, and we're gonna move on to the final fruit, which is this lime over here. We're gonna leave the stem because when we do the background, we can put the stem back on because it's such a dark color. So I'm putting my colors back. For the lime, we will not be using the peach anymore. We're actually gonna go in with the lime color for the sketch. And we're also going to be using green. So with the lime, we're going to sketch out a smaller circle than the orange. So if you just like compare, it's a little bit smaller than that. The top of this kind of starts at the middle of the orange. If you take a ruler, it's a little bit above the middle of the orange. Honestly, at this point, you can just put it wherever you want. That's going to be the top of my lime, and the bottom is a little bit below that of the orange. I'm going to put it right here. And for this one as well, you can leave a little bit of white for the highlight. And I'm just going to color all around it with lime color. So that was with the lime green. Before we add any other colors, we're going to preserve this highlight by just coloring, adding some white. It's almost like adding a wax layer on top of it. This way we don't have any other colors coming into the white, or at least they won't be too strong. So I'm just taking the white and filling it in. You can do the same with this highlight too. So add some white right in the middle of this highlight to preserve the highlight. And with the lime green, going back to the highlight color and the sketching color, you can just randomly sketch along the edge, bring back some of this lime, because we want to create that texture, the bumpiness of the lime skin. Okay, and after you filled in the lime color, we're going to go in with our midtone, which is lime. And basically everywhere you see this dark color, and also kind of in the middle as well, just going to start filling that in. Also kind of like how we did with the pear, start from the darker and move into the highlight and fade off. So taper off. You can also add some streaks to create the dabbled skin effect. And then fill the rest of this in. Okay, after we have established the midtone, which is the dark green, we're going to go into the shadows and the shading. We're going to use two colors for the shading, which is red. They're going to be red and purple. So we're going to use these two together to develop the shadow on the slime here. So the first color we're going to use is purple. And before we start, just look at the shape. Recognize where it's coming or where the edge of it is. And I'd say it's right about here. And you can kind of sketch it before you start shading in the purple. And then I would just go in with it. There's also this little bit of refracted light, so you can leave a little bit of this green at the bottom here. And our second shadow color will be red. And we use red because red is the opposite of green, or it's complementary color. So when we add it to green, what happens is we get almost a black, but the black it's got color in it. So I have a little example over here. Basically what we're trying to do is just to create color value. So a little info, or if you can see this. As we know, value is how dark or light something is. And with this black and white scale, you can see it's going from black to white. And in between, we have these grays. With the color, you can use black to darken, for example, red. But for this one, I actually use green. And this is basically the same range. Essentially, you just have to use your complementary colors when shading the shadows. So with the red, in the darkest areas of the line here, so right here, I'd say you can add some of this red. And if it's too red, you can always add some of that green back. And we always call black the forbidden color because it gets too dark too quickly and it's often really hard to bring the color back. Hence why we use the complementary color. So I think it's a little too red up here. Take the green and just bring back the green. It's kind of like a mixing process. And if you think the green here is a little too bright, take the purple and just mute it down a little bit. So I'm just lightly adding some purple along this edge. And for this refracted light at the bottom here, we can use some peach and just add a little swab right down there. And also along the edges. All right. If you're finished with the lime, we can move on to the most interesting part, I think, are these dark shadows that are kind of everywhere. As you can see on this image, it's kind of flat. But when we add the dark shadows and the darkest tones, everything will kind of come together. It'll make sense. So I'm going to start putting my colors away. And for the shadows, we will use a combination of purple, dark green, some red, and forbidden color, black. So we're going to use a combination of these 4 colors. Just kind of stack them all on top of each other. And when you're ready, let's start moving into the shadows. All right, the first color we're going to use is purple. And we're going to sketch very lightly, very faintly, just about where the edges of the shadow are, or where the, see this, the outline of the silhouette, or the outline of the shadow is. Once again, it does not have to be precise. There's also curves along the edge of the shadow because of how the fabric folds. But we don't have to care too much about that. As long as the shadow is dark, that is all we need. Okay, and for the bottom of this orange, so I'm just sketching with the purple. You can always compare how large something is. So let's say this shadow, the lime's shadow is about half as wide as the lime itself. So distance from here to here is about half. But once again, it does not have to be exactly on point. All right, so we've sketched out the shadows now. You can just start filling in the inside, color inside what we just sketched with some purple. Being very careful not to go over the refracted light of the fruits themselves. But it's okay if you do. So this is the base color for our shadows. It's just going to be purple. And continue doing that for the rest of the shadow. Okay, so once you have finished the base for the shadow, which is the purple, you can go in with some dark green and just go over the exact same spots. Once again, we're just layering the color. So with my dark green, I'm going in, filling in the purple. Okay, after the purple and greens are done, I'm gonna take this red and just go, this is mostly just for the refraction, sorry, of the orange on the cloth. Here, as you can see, the orange is really bright, and it's actually the colors bouncing back onto the cloth, as you can see here, and also a little bit in the shadow as well. So with the orange, or with the red, sorry, I'm just going to add some of that tone back in. It doesn't have to be orange It's just something that's warm and we can guess that it's happening right here. So when we use the red, when our eyes see the red, it's kind of like the illusion that something's orange. Basically, we're just adding some of these extra colors in the shadow just to make it more interesting. So I've just along the bottom of the orange, not really anywhere else. Oh, and one final thing before we go on to using the black, I'm going to darken this shadow. So the one that's on the pear because of this orange. So this in this area, I'm going to darken this just so it doesn't stick out. And it's also because it is really dark. So I'm just going to darken it a little bit more. Just taking the purple, green, and all the colors that we've used so far and just making it darker. You can also bring some of it up. As you can see here, it's going from the darkest and fading away. Taking the purple again, just bringing the darkness. Okay, and now we can finally add the black. So the black will go into the darkest areas. And we use this to create what's called ambient occlusion. I'll just write it down right here. So in this little crevice or this little corner right here, there's a lot of visual tension. And we have to make that really dark. That's why we're using black. And it's called ambient occlusion. It's basically the place where light cannot reach. So in the middle of all these fruits, there's this dark pit. So we're going to take our black, and wherever you think the image is the darkest, you can add some of this black. And it'll really just bring the shadows together. Kind of see it's already creating a lot of tension here. So also behind this pear, right by the foot of this pear, there's a little bit of this darkness that doesn't have any color to it. You can also add some at the base over here. There's just a tiny little bit at the bottom of the fruit of the orange. Just a tiny little dot, barely noticeable. And also just a little bit here. It's almost like a strip. Also, I'm putting a little bit on the pear itself, but not too much because the fruit, it's very shiny and it picks up more light than the cloth. So right here is where the darkest colors need to be. And that's why we're using black. All right. And we're not quite done yet because for today I actually wanted to focus on the background a little bit. The background is also just as important as the objects. So if you have white, if you have gray, I know that's not one of the colors that most people have. If you have gray, you can just start filling the background in. But I'll explain the step a little bit later. So right now, just work on the shadows. Okay, I'm going to explain the background and what colors we're going to use. So the background, as you can see, it looks gray, but with our colors, it'll be very boring if we use just black and white or just gray. So there's a little bit of, we can make this gray actually very colorful. So what I mean by that is we're actually going to use a little combination of white, peach, green, anything, any color you want, preferably one of the lighter colors. And, before we actually do all of that, I'm just going to take my white and kind of fill in the entire background with just a thin layer of white. The reason why we do this is that we can preserve the white, but also when we add the other colors, it won't be too harsh. Because at the end of the day, we don't want to distract the eye from the main object, which are these fruits. So we don't want to make the background too interesting. So I'm just taking the white, kind of scrubbing it in the background. And if you kind of tilt it up to the light, you can see where I've added it. It's kind of just in the background. It's okay if you have these random colors. It is okay for the background to be a little messy. This is still an experiment, or what they call a study. So just continue adding this white. Not too generously, but you kind of want to cover most of the background. So once again, if I tilt it, see, it's mostly along. Oops. You can kind of see it, but it's just all in the background. So once you have finished that, we're going to go in with some of our colors, our shading colors. Okay, so I'm going to use peach for sketching the curves of the fabric because it is one of the lighter colors. And if I don't like something, I can always just kind of erase it, not erase it, but use the white and cover it up. So if I use black, that would be, well, then it's there. So I'm going to start sketching in these faint, blurred out lines. How we do that is, let's say there's a fold here. Go for this one. I'm not going to go this way, but I'm going to straight up and down, but in that direction, if that makes sense. I will use a dark color so you can see it. Let's use brown. So I'm going to sketch out this curve or this crease in the fabric. Once again, I'm not going from left to right like a line. I'm going to sketch my way from point A to B. Kind of like a slinky. And for all of these areas of shadows, these pockets of shadows, and right over here, just kind of etch them out with any color. We will blend it out with some white afterwards. And the background is very difficult. I'd say it's more difficult than the objects because in this image it's gray and it's such a ambiguous color. It's hard to mix with the colors that we have. So this is a very tricky step. So we're just going back to sketching basics. And just like how we would use a pencil to shade, we're going to use the oil pastel to shade. Because so far, most of our oil pastels have been mostly like pressing hard and coloring and filling it out. But you can also use oil pastels like you would use a pencil or a charcoal. So now I'm just here in this area. Just sketching in the shadows. Going nice and slow and taking my time and really looking at what these shapes are. These very organic shapes. Like, for example, this shadow to me looks kind of like a crescent moon, but much more straight. And this shadow is very important. Kind of goes down like a snake. Just shaking or etching my pen, or my, not my pen, the oil pastel back and forth. Just lightly adding some of these tones. And then darkening them where the crease is the most tight. So just along the edge of this crease, it is the darkest. So that's why I'm going to add more of this brown. And it gets darker at the top. And actually the image starts to blur because it goes into the distance. So for the top parts, we don't have to be too exact. We can just blend it all out afterwards. And to make the shadows of the fabric a little bit more interesting, you can add some additional secondary colors. So the most obvious one is this orange over here. You can add a little bit of orange right where we added the brown. Not too much though, or else it might just become a little too dark. And also brown already has some orange tones in it. So we just have to add a little bit more just to make it that much obvious. And for the other color I'm going to use is some blue, which you can also use green if you want, but these are just some secondary colors to make the shadows more interesting. Just like how we add extra colors in the fruits, in the object, we can also add some extra colors in the shadow. So for the blue, it makes things look cooler. So I'm creating kind of this cooler brown, especially down here. Just so it adds a little bit of dimension. The side as well, and especially in the shadows in the back, because as shadows get further away, we can also make them colder because cooler colors recede while warmer colors jump out. So I'm adding just some of this blue in the back, not too much. So when we look at it, our brains kind of mix the two colors together for us. So the blues, you can add some of the blues in the back near the top. You can also add some green. So this color is mostly for the shadows near the green fruits. So next to the lime, you can add a little bit of green, just like how we added some orange for the orange. Add some green for the lime. It also helps the objects blend into their environment. And a little bit more here. Just on these neighboring shadows in the background. And that is the end of today's class. Thank you for drawing. Yeah.
Thank you, Jean.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How did everyone do? Was it hard? Oh, that's really good. Wow. Yeah, I see all of them. These are also good.
Thank you, teacher.
Thank you for coming. May, are you there? Oh, I forgot. Oh, if you're still here, you can add the stem on the pear. I completely forgot about this. Just this black and brown, simple as that. I was wondering why it's so empty. Veronica, that's really good. Thank you. Okay, I'll leave now, but if May comes back, she has to stop the recording. I don't know where she went.
Pillow.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
See you
you.
next
Thank you
week.
very much.
Bye,
Bye.
teacher.
Thank you.
See you next
Bye.
week.